Hi, it's me, and I'm Dan. We're going to make a coffee table. This is the offcut from a worktop I put in my utility room after a recent renovation. I put that in quotes because I obviously bought knowing full well I was buying way more than I needed. It comes in typically like 3 meter lengths, and I didn't need that much, but I figured I would find a use, and I've been thinking about doing a coffee table for some time, so I have a design, I have a worktop. Let's cut some wood. So let's measure our first leg. So I want 275. Right, so we've got 2 legs, we've got a tabletop. The theory now is I want to route a trough in each leg, which is going to accept one of these. I have a bunch of these floorboards left over from a bit of a flooding issue I had in the hallway a little while back. Many of the boards were fine, several of the boards were not fine. And I had to replace the whole lot. But I knew this would come in handy, so if I route a trough for this, this will basically form a body. Doesn't need to be quite that long. I just need something to mark this thickness, and we'll just create a trail, panel it out, and we'll have like a little coffee table body cupboard. I don't know, what do you call that? Right, so what do we need? We need that looks to me like 18 mil. Right. I've been brutal upon this battery, it would seem. Oh, I came fresh off the charger. I guess I have done quite a bunch of fairly beefy cuts. Right, what I need is a tape measure. Okay, so we'll be about 95.5, I think, edge to edge, but let's just confirm with a marking. 96 centimeters. Bum, bum, bum. 96. You will thread into there nicely. So then we just need a little chunk at the back here to complete our structure. Right, well, I think we're out of time for the weekend. We've made some good progress, a little more to do. I guess for you, this will be no gap done. I'll see you in a sec.
Welcome back to day 2, and as you can see from the titles, my mic, well, I said broken mic, it's really idiot user who did not realize that it was left in a muted mode. So we are in voiceover mode. This is me attempting to explain the plan here of this coffee table is with these funky hinges so that the top will raise off and out of the way of the base, and I'm thinking through the sequence of events required, because in order to bolt the hinges in place I need access to the hinges, but in order to put the body in place I need the legs to be kind of removable because of the trench I've just routed. And so I'm just sort of thinking through how I'm going to do it. And what I'm explaining is I have these threaded insert things that screw into wood. And my plan is basically to drill out some holes to mount them in, because I think that it'll be easier for me to bolt some M6 nuts into these threaded inserts than it will be to worry about screws once I've got the whole thing made up. So that is the plan being explained very, very eloquently here by Parstan. It's just a shame that he couldn't work his mic properly. And so now I'm bringing you in for a slightly easier, closer look at that plan, the holes that are in the top bracket. It's kind of a weird design actually, these brackets, because the gas piston is very much in the way of at least 3 of the main mounting holes. So it is kind of awkward to get into, but I had tacked it in place with some screws, so I'm just going to pull those out, and then using the points that I just marked in with the pencil, we're going to drill out our threaded inserts. This is using the old depth set with a piece of tape trick, poor man's depth setter, just to make sure I don't go too deep in, and then using the Allen key to screw these in. Now at this point things seemed like they were going really well, but around about there was when I snapped one of the threaded inserts, and I'm getting kind of annoyed. These things, I guess they were just cheap, like possibly I drilled the hole a little undersized, but I think of the 6 I ended up putting in, I really only got like 1 in all the way without the whole thing shattering. But enough of the threaded insert had made it in that I decided to just angle grind my way out of that problem. It doesn't really matter, they're all going to be sat underneath a metal bracket anyway, so we carry on regardless with these not great threaded inserts. Of course, I then realised that the M6 nuts I was intending to use were a little bit too big for the holes, so I just had to widen out the holes in the brackets as well. But effectively, almost perfectly to plan. And then we just switch across and Rinse, repeat. We'll do the same on the other side. And then just checking the alignment, just tacking it in, because of course I'm immediately going to need to remove these legs in order to start doing the next part of this. Do I remember what I was attempting to explain to camera at this point? Not really. I was probably talking about how I'm about to flip the legs the other way around in order to work on the main body. Maybe not. So here we go, we flipped the legs around. I've put the first board in place on one side and I'm just sort of delicately tapping it in. This is a little bit of a fiddly operation because obviously, again, because I'm trying to get the boards in the trench at each side, it's a constant juggling act to have the clearance to get new boards in without releasing the old. So it was around about this point that I realized what I could do is just screw one edge of them in properly so that they stay connected, and that I would be fighting them a little bit less if I had that in place. These little white blocks are the sort of thing you get with a worktop to attach the worktop to the units. So I had a bunch of them from using this worktop in the utility room, and they seem like a perfectly good way of doing this. And so now that I've got the base in place, I can start slotting in the sides, and this whole thing starts to come together quite quickly from this point. I'm just using a couple more of those white blocks to tack in the top edge of the sideboards so that they hold in place and keep that whole basic base structure rigid. And now I can lift it out of the way in order to get the worktop out and begin to set it up on its brackets. At this point, I definitely think that I made the right move with the threaded inserts and the bolts. This was a little bit fiddly in place, but not too bad at all. I think trying to screw things back in at this point might have been kind of quite awkward, and it creates a nice solid attachment. And here we go, the first actual use of the top coming down in place. Lovely. I think what I'm realizing and describing here is that there's a little bit of a racking issue on the brackets. Like, it's quite a heavy top, and if you're not careful, it doesn't necessarily want to come up as smoothly as you might imagine. And I was sort of trying to think about ways that I might want to do that, but fundamentally, I don't have to get into it very often, so it's fine, and I'm quite happy with how much clearance we got. Okay, so a slight miscalculation. I had been working on the theory that I knew I wanted to trim this edge up to get it flush once I'd finished fitting everything up, and I had it in mind that I would use a router to do that. But, of course, even my longest flush trim bit is not long enough. So I've set up this fence. I'm just going to rip it down with the circular saw. And it's just going to have to do. Let's grab some of this collection. And that is much better. I can now come in with just the orbital sander to clean up the rest of that.
but we're in much better shape.
And now here I am enthusiastically describing how much thought I put into the kind of radius I wanted on the legs and the edges. I spent a fair amount of time trying to decide. This is one of those sort of design decisions that you spent a fair amount of time agonizing over minutiae, like how much of a curve, how many places. I quite like the boxy design, but obviously you don't actually want sharp edges everywhere. And so I ended up deciding on rolling the feet on the outside edges just so that they would potentially slide on the carpet a little bit easier. But then I chose to round the top edges just with the sander, so it's really just a break edge, so it's still quite square, but you just take the sharpness off, which, you know, I figured err on the side of taking less material off, and if I decided I didn't like it, I can always take more off. But if I went for a bold round over and then didn't like it, then I would be unhappy. So here we go, in with the sander, on with the headphones. I think I was listening to a podcast, and just generally going over the whole thing, tightening up. Here I actually broke out the flush trim router as I realised I had a weird little step from where I had cut the length off right at the beginning of this video, so I just sort of cleaned that up quickly and then resanded it, which is good. And then once we've sanded, break out the Danish oil. I was appreciating the Knipex grips for being able to pull off the little metal lid on this thing. Danish oil is quite a nice finish. It's pretty fast to apply, only takes a couple of hours to dry. And it sort of keeps quite a natural look to the wood, which I like. So that's what I went with. It's an external finish, so I figured if it was designed to be put on wood for the outdoors, then it's probably good enough for a coffee table. We've applied a couple of coats of oil. I'm just going to give it a quick light sand with like 1000 grit, just to take a little of the raised off it. And then we're done. We're going to put it in situ and see what my wife thinks. Yeah, this stuff is like 1000 grit. So it's not really doing much. Just make the turn is nibbing. Yeah, that feels nicer. It's sort of that kind of action.
Right, you need the back as well as the front.
It's a bit, the top is a bit heavy, I think, for
What was intended.
it to.
It's cute.
Well, there you go. that's my new coffee table, all finished and in situ. It's been a long time coming. I hope you enjoyed this video. See you next time.